Convention of State supporters. My name is Whitney Taylor. I am your host for today's COS Live. I am joined by Andrew Ruff. Andrew, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, Whitney. I'm happy to be here with you for another episode. How are you doing?
I am so excited. I'm doing so great. We have a lot of in this episode. First, people are freaking out about the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So we're going to be discussing that, kind of evaluating how our nation is responding to this news and questioning if this is the way it should be. We should be reacting to this, and how we should look forward in our nation right now, because it's been kind of crazy. There's a lot of drama surrounding that. So we're going to be discussing that. We also are going to be interviewing Bud Cornwell, who is a Marine and a member of the Convention of States Action Team. He has a podcast out, so we're going to be discussing his podcast with him. Super excited. I'm a huge Bud fan, so I'm really, really pumped for that. We also have an Ask Us Anything segment at the end of the video, so definitely ask your questions throughout the segment, and we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability at the end. And of course, we have our Article 5 trivia giveaway with our Vice President himself, Mike Ruthenberg. So Mike, take it away.
Our prize today will be a very rare historic artifact. You might call it related to the Constitution. This is a mug from the historic simulation that we did. It's a simulation of what an Article 5 convention would look like. We did that in 2016. This is a very rare thing. I drink my tea from it pretty much once a week. And I've put in a pocket guide, of course, because who doesn't want a pocket guide when they pull out a mug? And so you'll get a rare version of one of these mugs that all of our delegates, many of them sitting state representatives, got when they came to this historic event. So that's our prize. And the question today is revolving around the First Amendment. And I'm sure you've seen lots of television shows where they go out into the public and do the man or woman on the street in order to find out what's going on. And if you did that, you'd find about 7 or 8 out of 10 people who are going to be asked couldn't tell you the 5 freedoms that the First Amendment provides us. And so that's my question for today. What are those first 5? Except we're going in the spirit of the Constitutional Live course that is just rocking. We're going to ask you to only name one of them because we want you to be speaking. So the first person name one of those 5 freedoms, and there's an extra bonus if you can name all of them that are afforded us by the First Amendment, then you will win our prize. And I'll get back to that as soon as we get to the bottom of this show. But stay tuned because Bud Cornwell is going to deliver, and Whitney and Andrew always deliver. So I'll be back a little bit later, and enjoy the show.
All right, thank you so much, Mike. Good question. I'm excited to see if anyone can answer that question. Hopefully y'all can. I mean, y'all are wizards about the Constitution at this point. So yeah, absolutely, me too. So we are going to be talking about the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and this is a huge deal in our nation. It kind of has thrown the 2020 election into turmoil, it seems. People's reactions are crazy, and we're seeing them all across the nation. People just responding in very interesting ways. She was loved by many for her sharp wit, her dedication to progressive ideas, and just a really sharp mind. She was really smart and had a lot to offer and she kind of paved the way for a lot of justices and a lot of the men and women of this country. So it was pretty interesting. Her legacy will definitely live on, and her death is definitely being mourned by the left and the right at this point. But there's been a few reactions to this that have been a little bit interesting. I'm going to show a little bit of a video right here about a woman's reaction to the death of her.
I'm driving your car, but I just got a notification that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died! Could this year get any worse? Ruth, you just had to make it to 2021!
Yeah, it's hard not to watch that and laugh a little bit, but it does beg the question, why is there such a violent response to this? Why do people seem to believe that their lives are in danger after the death of an 87-year-old Supreme Court justice? Like, why is this such a huge deal? I mean, she's been battling cancer for at least a decade. That's quite a long time. And though we didn't really expect her to pass away when she did, I mean, it was kind of expected she would relatively soon. So it's very sad, but wow, why is such a violent response? It seems like there's such an unhinged and illogical response to this. Why do you think that is, Andrew?
Well, I think part of it is because there's been such an emphasis on the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has been handing down decisions now for decades that really impinge upon the obligation of Congress to exercise their constitutional role as the only branch that writes the law. And so we've heard this before, legislating from the bench. I'm sure you've heard it called that before. And so what we have is a society that sees the Supreme Court as interpreting the Constitution instead of following the Constitution as written. I'm sure you've all seen, the Constitution. It's 4,500 words, basically. And that's the Constitution as written. And then there is the Constitution as interpreted. It's this giant book that's 3,000 pages, and it's filled with all of the Supreme Court decisions and all the precedents. And so now you have unelected individuals on the Supreme Court who are interpreting the Constitution instead of following it as it was written. And unfortunately, the people get really removed from this equation, and there's not really any ability to check them. And so then you see these justices interpreting the Constitution, decisions that affect healthcare, that affect immigration, that affect reproductive rights, they affect gay marriage, for example. I mean, this is an unbelievable amount of power that they have in the highest court of the land. And they have the ability to shape and mold society. And that's why I believe they are freaking out right now and why they are completely unhinged, because they believe the court has this level of power that can transform American society. And they see that it's going to go in the opposite direction because of Trump's appointee, who will possibly be more of a constructivist or a person who doesn't want to interpret the Constitution. So they're freaking out about that. At least that's my view. But really, I think the more important part is the fact that the founders did not envision this type of reaction. I think we were doing a 180-degree turn from what the founders believed was the purpose of the Supreme Court, which is not to legislate from the bench. And furthermore, I think that they would be just appalled to see this type of reaction when a sitting Supreme Court justice passes. What do you think, Whitney?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And I definitely think the founders did not expect such a strong negative reaction to this, or maybe not even assume that Supreme Court justices would have as much power as they do. That was not the plan originally, for them to have that much power. But they did know that government just kind of evolves into a place where power is centralized and away from the citizens. And they knew that was going to happen. And so that's why they placed Article 5 in our Constitution, which gives us the power to, make amendments to the Constitution as, interpreted, so that we are able to go back to the original document. And that's what we do here at Convention of States. And I think it's really interesting, the reaction of people to the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think that we can look at that and be like, wow, they weren't kidding. It kind of puts into perspective how much power they have and how much this rocks our nation. Like, it's crazy to me. It blows me away. And like you said, the founders would be distraught seeing the way we're reacting to this, because it's just craziness. It's absolutely insane. And the media is now making this a huge deal. We've heard so much about it. There's probably not very many people across the nation that have not heard about this and are aware of it. And now all this power is up in the air. Who's going to grab it? The fact that that is just such a huge deal is just, I don't know. It's pretty crazy. But good thing that people across the nation are realizing this, and we have over 1.7 million Americans who have signed the petition. We have 4 million people who are, interested in the Convention of States and are supporters of the Convention of States, and that know that this is a problem and that want to go back to the original Constitution and want to limit the power, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government. So at least people are aware of that, and I think this is just another example of that, being put in place, just realizing how much power Supreme Court justices have and how people want to get that snatched up. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. There's a lot up in the air. We'll see what happens. But I'm very excited that I am about to introduce Bud Cornwell into today's video. He's United States as a gunnery sergeant in the Marines, and he also volunteered as a state director of COS Arkansas and is the technology services manager for the Convention of States Action and the host of the Patriot Cause podcast. Wow, I just lost all my breath. He has a lot of credentials. But thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I want to thank Convention of States so much for what they do, but specifically the people that are out there. We're here for you, and I'm just privileged to be here with Whitney and Andrew and to have the opportunity to give my take on our situations that we're in and to be thankful for what Convention of States is doing for us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. So first, I just kind of want to get your opinion. After talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I just want to get your opinion about her death. And just why do you think there's been such the world seems to be turned upside down. What is your perspective on this? Is this how it's supposed to be in a healthy republic? And how can COS help to rectify this?
Absolutely. With my generation, the way we're looking at this situation is not new. A lot of the kids that are going off in left field, as we call it, or having this, these breakdowns over the society. One, they don't have the experience as it relates to the different political winds that goes from one direction to the other. We'll go back to the 60s and the 70s, same situations, when one political entity disagreed with, whether it was the Supreme Court justice or the DOJ or the Department of Defense, always had these battles that went back and forth. But the good news about this situation, like the rest of the times that I believe, is the foundations of the Constitution is what drives the country, not the emotions of the people. However, the emotions do come into play when you start talking about policies and changing society and so forth. And Andrew did mention this, and we do have a concern about how the Supreme Court is actually writing or indicating the laws, and it's not going through basically the three branches as necessary. So the reaction that the people have is not normal when it comes to how we view the world today, but it is normal throughout the history. It's just been done in different ways as far as the discontent of what the policies and the politicians have to say about it. So that's what I take.
I think you're really spot on about that, and really you tied in your own generation, which is great, and that's a unique perspective because different groups of people have different perspectives, and so that's awesome that you are kind of fleshing that out. I want to ask you though about your involvement in COS, because this is your second time coming on to COS Live. We had you once before after Arkansas became the 13th state to pass the COS resolution to call an Article 5 convention to limit the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government. So after Arkansas passed, what made you want to continue with Convention of States? Aren't you done after you passed the COS resolution in your state?
That's a good question. I want to go back to when I started in Convention of States, and it can answer a lot better the question of how we passed and why we passed. My wife and I moved to Arkansas. I was a government employee working for the VA as a CIO. And inside of me, there's something that was happening with our country all the way back. This was 2013. And I said, got to do something. So I was looking for a Constitution group to join in Northwest Arkansas. I didn't really find too many of them that were within the area, but this small group was there. And it just so happens that Jim Estes was the state director for COS, and he's the one that introduced me to COS, showed me the briefs, and it really brought me in. It took me a few months to really absorb it. But the bottom line is this: it's stuck in my soul and it's stuck in my heart. So it took us 6 years to pass the Convention of States. in 2019, I was privileged to be the state director at the time. And it just so happens they were doing some shifting back and forth in national, and one of the information technology positions came open, and I took the opportunity to do that. And I wouldn't have done that if I didn't know that the team in Arkansas and the new state director, Jackie Martin, would be perfect for the position, and she's doing a great job. So I haven't left Arkansas without knowing that they're doing great there, but I left to be more part of Convention of State. So really becoming into the national, not only do I have the experience of going from an SIA DC all the way to the state director, now I have actually the ability to help everyone, not only with information technology, but with also helping others learn in the field exactly how we were successful at certain things, which depends on your state, can be very helpful. And a good example is that is a great team I had in Arkansas developed. They came up with writing handwritten letters to the legislator, changed the whole outlook on what we did. So the bottom line is when Convention of States gets in your heart, you can't leave. There's many people that come, they become district captains and they move on, but I'm telling you, it's still in their heart and it's still with them because they know it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. That's so true. Dang, if you're watching this and you're not a Convention of State supporter yet, I bet you are. Like, that was so great. But you do so much for the organization. You're always involved. I love seeing you all over COS. I loved meeting you in Midland. You're just a fantastic human being. And I've learned so much just from watching your patriotism, and I just absolutely love it. So I know that you do a lot within COS, but what would you say is your favorite part about working in COS, and favorite, like meeting the grassroots, for example, or working with technology? Like, what's your favorite thing about being involved in COS?
The number one thing is, in my heart, I'm a Christian and Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, hands down. And what I see is the people in this organization and how thankful I am that I get to help them, that I get to work with them. And, when they have issues, and just like, people going nuts and screaming, well, sometimes we have those issues and they get on the phone with Bud and I get to calm them down. I get to help them out and let them know, hey, the world's not going to come to the end. We're going to get there. And so my favorite part is you. That's what the favorite part about it is. And being in Arkansas as a state director, I had my team and I had my supporters, but now I get to be involved with all of Convention of States, everybody out there, and I get to support them. That is just a blessing. That's the best thing that I can say that I do every day.
Oh, that's just so fantastic. And, as Whitney said earlier, you have just such high credentials, and you just have been all over at Convention of States, and you have so many other things that you're doing outside of Convention of States. One of them is your podcast, the Patriot COS, which is just an excellent podcast. It's very digestible, and it's you stay on topic and you stay very concise, which is just amazing. So tell the viewers why you wanted to start a podcast like this, and just tell us maybe a little background about your podcast.
Absolutely, Andrew. I'm a retired United States Marine. I spent 20 years of my life in the Marine Corps. And I was trained and taught by some of the greatest patriots that ever walked this planet. World War II, Korea, Vietnam. These are people that went out there and made it through the war, but they knew millions that didn't. And that sticks in me tremendously every day. When I wake up, I think about the country we have and how great it is. The podcast that I put together is me talking to the world, specifically talking to our veterans. Marxism and communism has massively infiltrated this country at a level that I never thought I'd ever see in my life. The podcast that I'm putting together is focused on getting people to understand what Marxism really is, what communism really is, and how it's a cancer to our lifestyle. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal that talks about, having the ability to be who you are, where you are, conservative, the same thing. This is not talking about political views. This is talking about an ideology that is just infiltrated into our country. So it's a serious issue that I talk about. But also, what's really neat is I give the ability, because I bring out and I put on my gunny hat and I do some of my gunny quotes and talk about the Marine Corps stuff, and it gets people laugh. It gives them a little bit of energy, and they get to hear from the old salty gunny, different stories and things that they're not used to, but it gives them a laugh and it makes them feel good. So the podcast, thepatriotcause.com, or you can go to Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify or different ones and check out thepatriotcause.com.
That's so cool. So as a Marine, that perspective really comes out in your podcast. So how does your service to your country give you a unique perspective, not only within your podcast, but also when it comes to Convention of States?
Well, the military, let me put it to you, this is how simple this is. The military, along with the federal government, the people that are in the elected officials, they have to raise their hand and they have to say the oath to the Constitution of the United States. So the military takes that very serious. Think about what I'm going to tell you real quick. We do not say an oath to the president. We don't say an oath to Congress. We don't say an oath to the American people. Think about what I'm telling you. We say an oath to the Constitution of the United States, which means we will support and defend. This is why the military does what we do.
Yeah. Wow. That's real good. So good. But it was an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to ask you questions. We need to have you back on. I feel like there's so many more questions I have for you. And I bet other people will want to ask you more questions in the future. But definitely check out Bud's podcast for sure. I know a link came up, so you can go ahead and look that up and take a look. It's full of amazing wisdom and very unique and awesome perspective that I think we all should be aware of and take to heart. So thank you so much, Bud, for sharing with us everything. I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you all. And the supporters, all you people out there in the field, you're the ones that we're thanking every day. And we love you and support you every day.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, we're going to go to Mike Ruthenberg. He has the answer for our Article 5 trivia question. So, Mike, take it away.
Okay, I'm back. And now I'm sure you're just sitting on the edge of your seat, or you've read all the comments, because there's so many people on this broadcast that know the answer to our trivia question for the day. And don't forget what our prize is, which is one of these. It is a mug from our historic simulation filled with one of our pocket guides. And although you can't get the mug from the COS store, even if you wanted one, there's a lot of cool things you can get from the COS store. So I'd recommend you go there. Shop.conventionofstates.com is the web address. Go there and see if there's a shirt or a hat or something else that you would like to wear, so people will ask you what you're involved in, and you'll be able to help them to understand that we are going to use the Constitution to save the Constitution. And we now are going to refocus back to the First Amendment to the Constitution. Remember, there's 10 amendments to the Constitution. This one affords us quite a number of freedoms. The first one, well, first of all, there's 5 freedoms that the First Amendment affords us. First one, almost everybody should get, is freedom of speech. Freedom to speak as we wish, and the government can't or shouldn't be able to abridge that right. The next was freedom of religion. And there's some confusion around that. It just simply means that we are free to worship or to practice the religion that we want, and the state or the nation, as the case may be, cannot establish a national religion. Freedom of the press. We all know what that's like, and it almost seems like that's almost a crisis stage for us right now with what's going on there. Freedom to petition our government to redress our grievances. That's the fourth one. And the fifth one is our freedom to assemble. So if we want to get together and we want to either petition our government or we want to assemble for any reason we want, then that is a right afforded us on the First Amendment. So those are the 5. If you don't remember them all, Write them down because it's a good thing to know and to think about as we enjoy the freedom we have as a nation. So that's what we have today. Hopefully you're the one that was the first one to at least get one of those freedoms the First Amendment affords us. And now I will turn it back over to Whitney and Andrew to wrap up the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. All right. So we're going to wrap up today's episode. That was a really fun episode. I loved it. It was so fun to hear from Bud, and I just think he's fantastic.
He's so amazing.
We all are frustrated. Right? I know. We all are frustrated with corrupt politicians, and we hit on that earlier about just how crazy it is that our rights are being steamrolled by DC politicians. But like I mentioned earlier, we do have a solution that's as big as the problem, and that is in what we're doing here at Convention of States, which is bringing the power back to the people. So if you have not signed the petition, which hopefully most of y'all have, but if you haven't, please go to www.conventionofstates.com, join your local COS team, get involved as a leader or as a volunteer, and sign the petition as well while you're there, and we'd love to have you. We are definitely involved in every single legislative district across the country. So wherever you all are, no matter if it's a liberal state, conservative state, doesn't matter. We are definitely involved in your legislative district. So go ahead and take a look and become involved and see what you can do to further the cause.
Yeah, and also make sure to follow us wherever you get your social media buzz, Facebook, which you probably already follow since you're checking out Facebook Live right now, but also we have Instagram and Twitter and Parler, so make sure to go subscribe there. Make sure to like and share all of the COS stuff that you love, get other people into this movement. And then also make sure to subscribe on YouTube to get the most up-to-date videos of Mark Meckler and other volunteers around the nation. It's really critical that you do that, so go ahead and do that. Make sure also to show up to the COS Battle Cry with COS co-founder Mark Meckler. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday night right here on Facebook. We will see you next Tuesday for another Facebook Live at 6 p.m. Eastern time. But for now, we have a country to save, so it's time to get back to work.